5. Trevor's voice crackled in the headset as I pressed my body against the wall. I looked over to Paige, watching as she quickly put a small brick of C4 over the door frame. Her eyes met mine as she gave me a nod. I returned it and checked my rifle, making sure the suppressor was tight. 4. The glint of Eric's scope reflected off the moonlight in the distance. He was about 100 yards away, sights trained on the door. The rose bush that he was sitting in swayed gently in the summer breeze. Looking around, this place really did have its own type of beauty. The garden was dotted with different kinds of flowers. Roses, tulips, and orchids flooded the landscape in a sea of colors. It felt like I had been dropped into a Van Gogh painting. 3. I checked my face mask, making sure it was secured over my mouth and nose. I could feel the rubber digging into my cheeks. Breathing in the filtered air, hot and stale. Briefing indicated potential airborne agents that would cause change, metamorphosis. Trevor called it a forced evolution, and an unwanted one. 2. I felt Wade's tap on my shoulder, signaling me. My hand shot to my hip, grabbing a flat black square. I stuck it to the door frame and jammed my finger on the center. Instantly, 5 red dots popped up on the square, moving erratically, almost jerking, moving smoothly only for a second or two, then stopping and jumping forward. I turned and held up 5 fingers to Wade, who nodded and slammed the bolt home on his machine gun. 1. I took a breath to settle my heart rate, feeling the ridges of the rifle's grip. It was calming, like as long as I held on, nothing could ever hurt me. Paige's detonator being primed snapped me from my self-reflection as quickly as it came. 1 more breath, 1 more second of safety. Send it. The calm was gone. The storm was here. The shit had hit the fan and there was no turning back. The charge shattered the door to splinters. I raised my rifle, turned in, and went to work. There was no time to think. Instinct fueled me as I pushed inside, my eyes locking onto the target in front of me. The blast must have knocked them to the ground, seeing as they were still struggling to get to their feet, grabbing at a table to level themselves. I put 2 shots in the thing and swung left. On your 6, Rook. I felt Paige glide behind me as she put 2 into another one on the right-hand side of the table. It was hard to focus. Trevor had cut the power, so while I knew we were in the kitchen, I could hardly see anything. I moved slowly around the table, listening for footsteps, watching the shadows for anything out of place. Something gave out a gurgled cry and lunged at me from the left side, and I jumped backward. I had made it just in time as a large cleaver wedged itself into the hardwood. The creature chattered to itself while trying desperately to pull the knife out, making strange scritches and groans. Sounded like a lab rat that knew his time was up. The thing made it real easy for me to sighten as I turned its brain to mist, spraying the back wall with what was left of whatever it was. A few more shots let off before I heard clear. A neon green light took over the room as Paige cracked a glow stick and dropped it on the table. Now that I was actually able to see, I could tell how nice the kitchen was. A long industrial-sized shell of a room wrapped around me. Hands hung from the ceiling, dropping down and swaying a bit before giving a soft little chime. The table itself must have been used to carve meat. It was stained all over with blood, the once yellowed wood taking on a soft orange hue with bones littering the tabletop. I bent down to pick one up and examine it. It was thin and long, possibly a rib bone. It had been stripped whole and bleached a bright white. What stood out to me most, though, was the number of bite marks covering it. I looked down and examined the rest. They were all the same. Stripped and bleached, yes, but not on. It came to me that these bones started to get bigger. Different bones, different parts from the corpse. These bones looked familiar. They couldn't have been from an animal. Think I found Delta's guy, I said after dropping the bone back onto the heap. You're sure? Paige answered back after kicking a body away from the table. Come see for yourself. I took the time to snap open my own glow stick and check the body of one of the creatures. Bending down, I could see it was dressed in a dirty, handmade robe. The hood covering its face hung heavy. I had to actively try to lift it, and underneath I saw why. Its face was bare with no eyes, thin little slits for nostrils, and a wide, lipless mouth that hung open, exposing broken, jagged teeth. The ears had been removed. In their place sat 2 small craters, oozing green liquid down its blister-covered neck. It was only when I lifted the head up that I found the eyes, all 17 of them, protruding from the back of the creature's head. There was a deep purple covering where the whites were supposed to be, and cat-like cuts for the irises. I let it go with a wet smack onto the blood-covered tile. Whoever these creatures were before the change, they made a damn good job to be as far from human as possible. Paige's voice broke me from my thoughts. Whiskey 2 to Whiskey 1, how copy? Copy Whiskey 2. Trevor's voice came back. What do you got? We found Delta 3. What's left of her anyway? Primary objective reached. Requesting extraction. Before Trevor could respond, an angry, oily voice, heavy in a New Jersey accent, came over the line. Negative. Whiskey 2, stand by. The line went dead as Paige let out a frustrated groan. God damn it, Shay. Pinch Pendijo. Shay was the leader of Delta Team, one of the Syndicate's 26 squads that operated around the world. He prided himself on pulling the most dangerous and lucrative jobs. With that clout, however, came with him running his team ragged, job after job, often operating for more than a month at a time. No wonder his girl got made. Whiskey to be advised. Trevor came back online again. Operational parameters have changed. Changed to what, Trevor? Paige responded with just a hint of frustration. This is no longer a snatch and grab. Rendezvous with Delta at the entrance and initiate extermination protocols. I could feel Paige's frustration grow, but she just nodded and responded. Understood. Whiskey 2 out. The line went dead as she reloaded and walked towards the door leading deeper inside. Come on, Rook. Her voice was laced with equal parts venom and determination. I told you back in that conference room we'd be cleaning up this fucker's mess. The conference room had been packed when we walked in. At least 10 people inside, huddled together in tiny groups on opposite sides of the room, each one strapped down with various weapons and decked out in the latest gear the Syndicate could afford. Do we normally pull joint ops with other teams? I asked as I took my seat and reached for a manila folder marked Operation Gardener in big red letters. Not a common thing, but not unheard of either, Trevor said, scanning the room. Happened a lot more in the good old days, back when the Syndicate just started out. We didn't have the training and vetting we do now. Half the time it seemed like they just found the biggest dude in the bar and put a gun in his hand. I tried to keep my head down a bit and act like that's not exactly how they got me. If it ain't broke, then don't fix it, I guess. Looks like we got Romeo and Delta along for the ride, he continued before walking up to a woman on the right of us. She was tall with jet black hair that was half shaved, leaving the other side to fall over the left of her face. The MP5 she wielded was strapped to her waist while she thumbed through another Opus folder. She stopped when Trevor approached and gave a smile. Hey Kate, how you been? My, if it isn't Trevor Whitlock. Been a while. Her voice was soft and seductive, like she breathed it into Trevor's ear instead of out loud. Last I heard you had some trouble on the Nile. Never trouble, just a minor. He scratched the scruff of his short, graying beard as he thought. Inconvenience. That's not what I heard, she said in a sing-song voice as she stood upright. She was easily half a foot taller than he was. At least that's not what management says. Management says a lot of things that they do. When I got word Romeo was taking over your contracts for the time being, I feared the worst. She stepped a bit closer to Trevor. Whatever tension was currently happening, it didn't seem to faze him. Look, if we need to leave, just say it, Eric piped up, resulting in a hand planting itself firmly into the back of his head. Courtesy of Paige. Don't get used to it, Trevor responded after a moment. Canu's duty just gave me a chance to get the kid trained up. We'll be back in the field in no time. This caused her attention to turn towards me. She began making her way over and put her hand out to shake mine. Kate Watanabe, she said with a smile that was trying way too hard to be friendly. Marcus Kent, I said as I took her hand and shook it. She seemed odd. Doll-like would be the best way to describe it. Like she wanted you to notice her. To like her. She let go of my hand and turned back to Trevor, completely ignoring the others. Good seeing you, Trevor. Stay out of trouble now, okay? She said with a wink as she joined the rest of her team. Thought I hate her, I heard Paige let out as soon as Kate was out of earshot. You just hate her because she's into Trevor, Eric said teasingly. Ain't that right, Wade? Look man, Wade said, dropping into his chair with a mighty thud. There's only a few things I'm scared of. Paige is one of those things. You're on your own. We all let out a laugh as Trevor walked back, leaning in so only we could hear. Do you think for just once you can act like professionals? Did you even consider why they pulled 2 teams off active duty and brought us up? The table grew silent as we all looked down or away. Anything to not meet his gaze. He waited a moment before exhaling and sitting next to me. Grab a folder and pay attention. Here they come. Susan Bell, the short, stubby woman who acts as the main presenter in briefings, walked down the aisle towards the projector. By her side, however, walked a large, barrel-chested gorilla of a man wearing a muscle tank and cargo pants. His skin was tanned, well from what I could see, as most of it was covered in arm hair. His face didn't leave anything bare either. A gruff beard ran from neck to lip, then up to an unkempt goatee. The mutton chops on the side of his head covered his jaw as they reached out to touch his chin. A long, jagged scar across his eye completed his wild man look. He approached the podium as Susan dimmed the lights and turned on the projector. Whatever conversations that were still being had immediately went silent as he placed a massive shotgun on the table next to him. Evening. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Shayla Grant, leader of Delta and operation overseer for this mission. We stayed silent as the projector flipped through to an image of a Latin man. He was smiling with his hair slicked back, wearing a tuxedo. It was a pretty old picture, judging from the graininess, maybe taken back in the 90 seconds. Meet Raul Delgado, Bolivia's hotshot botany genius way back when. This is the last known picture of Raoul before his trek into the Amazon basin. He was in search of finding plants that could be used to counteract something known as Stoneman's syndrome, a disease that causes the body to overproduce calcium deposits and make bone grow on the outside of the body. This, he said as the slide changed, is when he returned. On the screen was a black and white photo of something. It was humanoid for sure, but it was also pure white, latticed with shards of bone crossing and weaving the whole body. Where his head of slick black hair once was, now rested a cocoon of bone. It twisted and circled around his face till it ended in a small, black hole in the center. It was walking towards the camera, arms outstretched as if it was ready to be carried off by angels. In one hand he held a small leather-bound book, in the other he was clutching a flower. Its bright white seemed to draw a blind spot in the photo, like every other color that was present when the picture was taken was drawn into it. Each petal was marked with a single dot, and the stem itself was as long as the thing that was holding it. He was gone 2 years. In that time he not only contracted the disease, it had mutated. The man could walk, talk, and have full cognitive function. He would later go on to publish a manifesto. The slide changed to the same picture as before, yet zoomed into focus on the book. In it he describes his journey in the jungle, how he became separated from his party, got lost, and floated for days down the river. Supposedly, he washed ashore onto a long-forgotten Incan city. It was there he found the quote La Orquídea de Dios, or Orchid of God. The next slide showed a close-up of the flower. Even now it was hard to get a good look at it. The photo seemed to burn out the closer it got to the petals. It was unsettling since the rest of the picture was normal. Yet when it came to the orchid, it warped, like it didn't want to be seen. He goes on and on discussing how this orchid saved his life, how it allowed him to evolve, achieve a higher state of being. The manifesto was circulated through some fringe science communities online, gaining a bit of a cult following before Raoul fell completely off the radar. We believe it was to take that online following and turn it into something tangible and dangerous. The next slide showed pictures of at least 20 people, all of whom were on missing persons posters. In the past 10 years, more than 30 of the world's top biologists, botanists, and chemists have gone missing. Inside sources indicate that Mr. Delgado may be recruiting them for something called the cultivation. Local law enforcement has been trying for years to get a strike team in to search the place, but have been failing due to what they call unexplained electromagnetic phenomena. Seems that whatever is going on there blocks out all satellite signals. In an attempt to gather information for interested third parties, I have opted to send one of my own undercover to Mr. Delgado's mountainside estate for reconnaissance. This last slide stood out from all of the others, not for its bleakness but for its beauty. A mansion rested on top of a hill surrounded by a sea of flowers. Dozens of colors danced across the landscape. It went on forever, nearly enveloping the house as it crept up and over the driveway, surrounding and drowning the cars parked there. In the last few weeks, our contact has been relaying information while under the guise of a fan and follower of Delgado. She talked about how they began to import certain strains of flowers from all over the world. Additionally, they've begun research into air filtration systems, how they work, how to maintain them, etc. We had feared an attack was getting ready to take place until Ashley went dark. That's why you're all here. We're gonna raid that compound. A small murmur came from the tables surrounding us. People began spewing complaints left and right, mostly about what they were going to be doing, who they were going to be doing it with, and how much they were going to get paid for it. Shay quickly had enough and slammed his fist onto the podium. "Shut it," he bellowed as the murmuring died down. "If you must know, the stipend is 100,000 per team, but I know you all have done a lot worse for a lot less. So I don't want to hear shit about pay. We find Ashley, pull her out, cap a few people dumb enough to follow a nutcase with a green thumb, and get the hell out. Am I clear?" No one said anything as Shay scanned the room. "Good. Romeo, you're on overwatch. There's a mountain range a half mile to the north of the compound. Whatever you say." I heard Cade's cool and calm voice ring out. "Whiskey, you're the ground team with Delta. Reach through the kitchen here on this south side. Delta will breach in through the garage. We cover more ground. We find Ashley faster. Where's Whitlock?" Trevor stood slowly with a groan and gave a stretch. "Right here, brother. You're with me on the command line. Full control of the power grid and water supply. We'll have you linked in on a closed-circuit comm channel to get past the dead zone." "Understood. Let's get it done. Try not to fuck it up like you did Egypt," Shay said with a sly shit-eating grin. I could feel the heat of anger begin building in Trevor. He took a second but responded in the same tone. "We won't let you down, man. You better not." "Now," Shay said while grabbing his shotgun and slinging it over his shoulders. "You all have your orders. Move out." I followed Paige's lead as we tiptoed down the hall. We had to move slowly through the darkness, cracking open a chem light every few meters to give off just a smidge of glow. What was illuminated, however, put me into Delgado's shoes, on his path to madness. At first everything seemed pretty normal. Multiple degrees on the wall, shitty modern art, dressers laden with books as thick as a dictionary. The works. As we kept going down, however, things began to evolve. It started subtly enough. A simple houseplant rested on a stand. Even in the dim green glow it looked beautiful. Deep purple leaves with a bright neon blue center. It was standing under a picture of Delgado and a woman. He was wearing a simple white suit that did well to give contrast to his dark skin. The woman was young, with a bright, vibrant smile marked with a dimple on her right cheek and dark hair that came down to her waist. She wore a long white gown and several gaudy jewelry pieces. In front of them both was a child, a boy wearing the same style suit as Raoul. Pretty much everything about him was the same. Same slicked back hair, same skin tone. The only thing that stood out was the same dimple the woman had reflected on him. I didn't know the Mark had a family, I said. Looking behind me, I saw the big green light dangling off Wade's neck. Pause for a moment. A glance up the hall showed that Paige's light stopped as well. He doesn't. Paige's voice cracked back softly. We would have been briefed otherwise. Yeah, he does. I'm looking right at them. Fuck are you talking about, man? Eric piped up. I heard the cracking of branches through the comms as he left his post to join us. I'm talking about the fact that Delgado has a wife and kid. Look, I turned and pushed the picture to Wade as he approached. He took and held it up close to his face, using the chem light to scan it. Slowly, his head came up, his eyes meeting mine as he tapped the earpiece and mimed the number 3. I switched over to channel 3 on the earpiece with a slightly indignant "What? There's no one here, man." "What? Fuck do you mean there's no one there?" "I mean," he walked closer to me and showed me the picture again. My heart sank as I saw what he was talking about. There was no child, no woman smiling happy and proud. There was no Raoul Delgado. Just a picture of a flower, its long stem reaching to the top of the frame, deep purple dots marking each white petal. What the fuck? I muttered out. My hands shook softly as I studied the picture that was once a family portrait only moments ago. "Wade, man, I swear I know what I saw." "I know," he replied with a slow nod. His voice, while deep, was trying its best to sound soothing, to calm me. "We don't know the extent of this place. We don't know if these things can manipulate us by imagery or if it's strictly airborne. Until we do, keep these thoughts to yourself. Last thing we need is to be worried about one of our own." He was right. We were at that crossroads, where it was too late to turn back, yet too early for things to go wrong. All I could do was keep pushing forward. I put the frame back on the desk as a beeping noise came through the earpiece. We were being signaled. I flicked the comm channel as Paige's shrill chastising came through. "Wade, Marcus, where the hell are you?" "Sorry," I said as I calmed the small flame of fear that burned in the back of my brain. "Found something on one of these dressers." Wade came to see if I could figure out what it was. "Give us a second. We're right behind you." "No, Rook, you're not," she exclaimed as that flame ignited even brighter. "I'm over by the entrance with Delta." "How do you even get lost in a hallway?" My eyes shot towards where I last saw her. There was nothing. No chem light, no cracked doorway to guide the way, only pitch blackness. I turned to Wade. His body was on edge as he scanned all around us. He looked over at me as I caught his eyes, apprehension causing them to appear twitchy and unfocused. "I don't like this shit, man," he said as he fired up his mic. "Eric, what's your 20? What are you talking about, man? I'm here with everyone. How the hell I got past your giant ass I'm not sure, but you told me to go ahead of you." "No, Eric, I did not." He was shouting into the comm now, frantic to understand the position we were in. Just that Paige's voice came back garbled over static. "Paige, say again." I needed to hear them, to have that comfort and security that was so quickly jerked from underneath me. I was greeted with nothing but static. Paige. It was no use. She was already gone.